Welcome everyone. First of all, thank you so much for joining us for the R-Ladies Melbourne monthly August event. Today we have a very young and talented speaker, Danyang Dai. Daidai has actually joined R-Ladies Melbourne as a committee member as well at the beginning of this year. She is currently a master student majoring in Applied Econometrics at the University of Melbourne and will be finishing the study soon. Dai has benefited so much from the R Markdown for all school works and research, and she would really like to share her experience with our ladies and all the participants. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm now going to pass over to...
So hello everybody, thanks for joining today. Hope everyone is staying at home and actually enjoying this time at home. Today I'm going to talk about R Markdown and why it is a better way of communicating with data. This is the link to the slides. And a little bit more about myself. So I'm from Beijing, China. I started studying my bachelor degree at Monash University. I'm currently a master's student at University of Melbourne. I can see a few of my professors are actually here today as well. Thanks for coming. So I'm studying Applied Econometrics and I'll be graduating end of the year. So moving on, you can find me at Twitter, GitHub, and feel free to add me on LinkedIn. And from here, you can go to my personal website. And if you have further questions later on, feel free to email me as well. So why R Markdown? So during my undergrad study, I was a very naive bachelor student doing commerce. I had nothing to do with coding or nothing to do with economic modeling. So the first time I actually do anything related to stats modeling was in this course called Introductory Econometrics at Monash. And back at that time, I was taught in eViews. So I have some assignments that I need to complete. So that one required me to write some math and write some model and then do the hypothesis testings. So as I was just doing Bachelor of Commerce, I don't know any fancy language such as LaTeX or anything that would help me to complete my assignment. So what do? I just go to Word as everybody else in my whole class. So I'm going to quickly stop sharing this and show you the one I did before. So this is one of my, hope you guys see this. So this is one of the assignment I did when I was in bachelor study. So you can see the ugly typed in math, and also for my equations, somehow is inserted a screenshot somehow. And then I have repetitive paragraph about my hypothesis testing. Sorry, can you guys see this?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can see that it's quite repetitive. It's just log level, repetitive testing, and repetitive sentence, and repetitive screenshot of the ugly equations here. So I think I learned something more when I'm going to my master study. That's when I was introduced LaTeX. It was great for a while. It was great in typing all the math derivations. I don't need to use a word that I click everywhere. So that was pretty good. However, I still have the same problem. So regardless the language I use to do my analysis, such as Stata, eViews, R, MATLAB, I still need to copy and paste out the output. It was okay, but it's like as soon as when I need to put in a LaTeX table, it was quite a headache. So I really hope I had this kind of setting in my computer. It can help me copy and paste, but still copy and pasting also raises another issue. Sometimes I copy and paste it incorrectly. You don't want incorrect output. Another thing is, some people say, you could still do your screenshot thing. I did that as well. However, when I need to change my input, for example, sometimes I make a mistake in my code, so I wanted to change my input. As soon as I did that, all my output are different. So I need to do another set of screenshot and insert it to my output document. So today I'm going to share 2 examples of how I came from using screenshot, using Word, using LaTeX to R Markdown. So it will be a same thing, hypothesis testing, and also Bayesian estimation and graphical presentations. At the end of my experience sharing, I will do a quick demonstration of how to produce reproducible report. So let's go to our first example. So the first one is a very straightforward hypothesis testing, and the data set involves some bank employees' annual income, and dependent variables includes education, gender, minorities, and job categories. And you can see the details here. And the regression we'll be running is very simple, just a linear regression here. And the test we'll be using is LM test. And thanks to my professor, Chris Steele, to allow me to share this data set with you guys. And moving along. So suppose we're interested in the relationship between education and annual salaries. So here you can see the hypothesis testing here. And we have some R code. So in the gray area highlighted is the R code. So here is just exactly the same from the R script, where here is called an R chunk in R Markdown, which is start with 3 backtick and then a curly bracket, and you tell it's a language R, and you have some option settings here. And we use cat as to combine our text and our output. So our output here is the test statistic, which is here called test 1, and we want to run it 4 decimal places. And then here we calculate the critical value. And here you can see this very neat 1-sentence line that include that my text message and also my test statistics and critical values. So, but after we produce this, we always wanted to draw a conclusion of whether or not we want to reject our non-hypothesis. So let's move on to here. So this is the ideal output. So it's just 1 sentence that tells you whether or not we reject our critical value, our hypothesis test or not. So here is when the inline R code comes handy. I don't know about you guys, but still I sometimes couldn't compare the critical values and the test statistics. It's just sometimes you get confused with the number and sometimes it's very close. You couldn't really test it, like compare it with your eyes. So here I wrote this line of test. So it's a if function with the inline R code. So the inline R code looks like this. It also starts with a backtick, and R, it tells you that it's using R language and a if function. So following with that greater is the output from this inline R code. And also it tells you reject or not the hypothesis test at the 5% significant level. So it all seems quite easy, right? So let's move on and do another one. Since we don't need to do much copy and paste here, so it's very easy for you to compute different hypothesis tests. All you need to change is just few test results, and there you go. So suppose we're interested in the minority and job category, whether it affects annual salary. So we have a joint hypothesis test in here, and this is your non-hypothesis test, and then you have the alternative here. And those are all set of LM tests here. Most of us are familiar with the print function, which I highlighted in the purple color. And here is a set of the output. So we can see that's why we want to use the R chunk function, because here you can see you're printing out some non-ideal result. You have those dash and those things here, which you do not want to present in your final report. That's why we use this R chunk here, and we set the default setting result equals to assist. That means we print out this very neat 1-line sentence of your test statistics and your critical values. So, and for the conclusion, we also write a inline R code to replace the part that would be changed over time. So which is greater and reject or not. And here we can actually see why this inline R code comes in handy. It is very handy when you wanted to report a sentence or paragraph and with some changing factors. And it's also good that here you can see you could include mass environment. So like I type in this beta job cat and beta minority here, with a math environment. So this part is actually in R Markdown, is a combination of text message, inline R code, and also math. So it's pretty great when you wanted to produce something in one paragraph, and it looks like a paragraph, not some output from R straight away. So let's move on. So you might still think that I'm copy and pasting, but from my next experience of using Bayesian and adjusting all my prior settings, that's where I benefit the most from R Markdown. Here is just, I start doing Bayesian from last semester. And here is a classic Bayes rule here, and that tells you what it is. Don't freak out if you never heard about it before or you never done it before. I wouldn't say I'm an expert here and understand the full concept of it, so I won't try to explain it today. So let's just move on to the data today. The data we'll be using is quarterly GDP data, quarterly log GDP data from Australia. And it includes 230 observations from 1959 to 2016. And thanks for Thomas for providing me the data to share with you today. So when we plot the data, we can have a look at it. It's a clear upward trend, and we can assume that it's non-stationary because most of the economic data are integrated of order one. So that's when we think, oh, we might use a random walk with a drift model to model this log GDP for Bayesian approach. So here is the model we'll wanted to model today. And here are some underlying distributions. Since we want it to be a random walk model, so alpha is equal to 1. However, for Bayesian, we need to set priors for our distribution parameters. So here include mu0, alpha, sigma square, S, and mu. So for some people who's been working with it for a really long time, they have pretty good idea what those numbers are supposed to be and what is large and what is small in Bayesian kind of sense. However, it was my first time. I was like this. I was like, what should I set for them? I don't know enough to see what this figure is supposed to be. So what I decided to do is to test it out, because I have R Markdown now. I can test as many things as I wanted to. I don't need to change a thing. So here are some prior settings. So this is my first set of prior settings. So since if we think it's a random walk with a drift model, mu0 here is the quarterly GDP growth rate. So I think 0.01 is a good number to start with. So I put it as my mean, and 1 is a relatively big variance here. And then I have alpha equals to 1, and I set the variance to 10. So after I run my functions here, I have some output here. So I report the mean and the variance for each variable. And that's the set of the result I got here. So the variance are all relatively small with the prior settings that I put in. And we can have a look at the distribution. They all look quite normal. And for sigma square, it looks quite like a inverse gamma 2 distribution. So I think, oh, so even though with a relatively large variance, I still get a pretty small variance for my posterior distribution. What if I make it even smaller? So here, I still have the same structure at all. It didn't change at all. And then all I change is the sigma here, you can see. And then all my means and variance changed accordingly, also my graphical representation. Also, so I think about, oh, what if I wanted to change my mean? Supposedly my GDP does not follow this growth rate. I set it to 0. What does it looks like? So here is another set of prior settings. You can see all my means and variance also changed so accordingly. And it seems to be quite handy because I've done like at least 100 combinations of different priors. So what I've been doing is like, oh, checking my means, checking my variance over and over again. And also my plot, see what variance or what mean changed my plot and what it should be. So it seems quite handy, right? Because when you wanted to see, for example, even though with your simulations, when you set a different set, all your simulation result changes as well. So with this, you could see what happens when you change your input, and it's quite easy because you don't need to write repetitive code for them. So so how I made this? So behind this thing is for them is the inline R code, as I showed you before. So here I replaced the figure I wanted to report with this inline R code. So those would change if my data changes, all of my output changes accordingly. So that seems to be quite handy. So later on during my demonstration, I'm going to show you guys how this one comes handy when you have to report daily changed data set. So moving on. So you could also see my plot. It was quite, so I didn't change much for my plot as well. So normally when we do an R script, most of the professors I came across, they use this PDF function and use div it off. So at the beginning, I'm not familiar with this code. So normally I think, oh, okay, I see plot, ggplot. So I just run the first 2 lines, but then I don't see my ggplot. So I was like, oh, where did my plot go? So it turns out, so when you run the PDF function without div it off, it doesn't do anything. So when you run these 3 lines together, I actually save the plot into a PDF, and here is the setting. So you want to set the height, the width accordingly. But the problem with this is like, you can't really see it straight away. You have to go to your folder and pull it out. Another problem with that is sometimes you forget to close that particular PDF before you update it. So if you forget to do that, your PDF actually do not update. So every time when you wanted to update a new PDF, don't forget to close your previous one and then update it again. However, with Markdown, it just uses part of the chunk. I'll do the same thing. And then most importantly, you're going to close it to update the figure. So every time you just run this, if your input changed, if your data changed, this plot just changed accordingly. And you can see there's some similarity here where you could also set the height and width about your plot and save it as a PDF. So I think that is enough for my sharing experience. So let's get our hands dirty. So before I do that, is anybody have a question? No? Okay, so if you have the slides with you, you could just click on this and it will take you to the another link. So if you don't have this, I'll just copy this to the chat so you can go to there. Yep, so now is a good time for you to open R because we'll be doing this in R environment. And I just sent the link to the chat. So if you have R open and if you have this page open, so I will just copy this code into your R console. So this demonstration is just going to be a very basic one. So I know we have some really advanced R Markdown users in the audience. So please feel free to shout out some tips to the chat so everybody can learn from you. Okay, I can see some questions in the chat already. Thank you for that. So I just copy and paste this R code to the chat as well. So if we all go to our R, oh, also, so before you run this code, some people might encounter the problem that they do not have used this package. So just go to package and install, use this, and you're ready to go. So after you successfully load in everything, you should have those few things sitting in your files. So I'm just waiting for everyone to catch up. Once you have these things sitting in your files, you can quickly have a go through. And if we click on the HTML, so today we'll be knitting our document into HTML, and we open this in a web browser. And so this would be the one we're trying to produce today, but it will be it will update itself automatically. So yeah. So if you successfully load in everything, you can click on this RMD file, which is short for R Markdown. And you can see that that's the R Markdown document here. So today we'll be using COVID-19 package, and ggplot2 and dplyr. So if you haven't installed them, now is a good time to do that. It might take a little bit, it might take a while to load in the COVID-19 package, but that's okay. So while you guys trying to do that, so for beginners, I will just do a quick demonstration of how you would also be using adding a new markdown. So later on, you can do that yourself. So normally we click on this to add in new R script. So when you go down a bit, you can see R Markdown. Also, before you do that, I think you should also install the R Markdown package. So if you haven't done so, that would be a good time to do that. And anybody have any other R Markdown related questions before we move on to details? Maybe questions about installations and LaTeX and other things? Okay, if not, so we can see here, when you click on adding a new R Markdown, it gives you different options. So for document, you could choose default output to be HTML, PDF, or Word. So for a PDF, it requires you, oh, yes. So when do I use you gave me a message about something. So yeah, when you do that, so I showed you guys before, so you just choose the option accordingly. I think you need to choose yes every time. So, and also mind that the 1 and 2 and 3 output changes every time. So you need to make sure that you select the right one every time. So after you've done that, you should be able to download this those files using this use me function. Is that clear? Moving on to our output document. So if you wanted to knit it to PDF, which that's what I do for all my assignment, you need to have LaTeX installed as well. So since we might not have everybody have that in their laptop, so today we're just doing the demonstration in HTML format. So if you think that R Markdown is only good for that, you're wrong. There are also other extensions that you could do with R Markdown. For example, you could also make presentation slides. So Beamer is a quite well-known theme among academics. So I know most of my uni slides are made from Beamer. You could also use Beamer via R Markdown as well. And also you could use Shiny app. So we had this talk last year from R-Ladies as well to teach you how to use Shiny apps. Also, there are some further extensions from R Markdown. So from template, so that is, you could use other package such as Backtick to make a customized resume. I personally made my resume using a tie as well. And also Shining Gun. I used Shining Gun to make the presentation slides today. It also kept the, you could also need the output into PDF or HTML. So for HTML, you can publish to the website quite easily as well. And most importantly, also support Chinese version. So you could make Chinese presentation slides using Shining Gun as well. So let's go back to our demonstration today. So today we'll be trying to update all the COVID-19 cases in Australia. So I call it, say, for example, call it COVID-19 report. And I click OK. And then there you go. So so this is actually a new R Markdown file I just created. So every time we create a new R Markdown file, it gives you a simple example of what it is. So we can see that we have the title bit. So from between the 3 dashed lines, this is actually called YAML. That's where you put in all the metadata in the R Markdown environment. That include title, author, and date. And also you can change your output into, you can choose your output to be HTML or PDF from here as well. And then moving on, we can see this is our first R chunk. And then you can see the color different, where the background is white. That is actually the environment called Markdown. So if you have used Markdown before, great, because they use the same syntax. And if you use R, and inside the R chunk is exactly the same as you would use the R in the R script. And those part is where, so before we move on, we will quickly show you the output of this document. So at the top of our Markdown, you can see this blue thing. It's called Nida. It's quite cute. So when you click on it, we want it. So Nida is actually called, the formal word is render. For example, we want to render into HTML. So I click here and then we save it, say report. You can choose where you want to save it. So I just save it at here. And then it's doing its job. So there we go. This is the example from our Markdown. So this is just every time we create an R Markdown document, this thing shows up. It's pretty good as like it will be a reminder for you every time what things is what. So here, let's do a comparison. So here we have the YAML part, which includes my title, here, author name, me, and today's date. And then with the two hashtag, so it's in Markdown language, it is the second level header. And then normal text is just text in the HTML. And then you could also insert website link using the angle bracket. And moving on, when you wanted to border text, that's how you do this. That's a syntax. And here is your R output. So we can see that we have this gray background area, which is exactly the same with the R. So this is your R chunk, what it looks like. And here is the output from your R chunk. And moving on, you could also plot data from here as well. So this is just a simple illustration of the default one. So I close this and go back to the one we wanted to do today. So I hope everybody have installed the package COVID-19 ggplot2 and dplyr. And after we install them, we could just quickly, so there are a few different ways where you can run an R chunk. The most easy way is just click on this green button. So I do this, this is running this bit of the R code. So to tell a little bit more about the R chunk setup and the options. So a great question before. So here you have, after the curly bracket, you have R, which is the language will be running in this chunk, and then you can name it. So here I name it as setup, this chunk is data, and so on and so forth. You could name it as plot as well, and name the plot of this output. So the first R chunk is a setup for the entire R Markdown document. So include equals to false, that means it will only evaluate the code. So it will only run the code here, but do not show anything related to this. Another default setting would be echo. I set it to be false here. The default setting is actually true. That means that alongside of your output, you also print out the gray highlight area as your R code there. So because we just wanted to present a very nice form, oh, sorry. So I'm just answering the question in the chat. Yes, the files need to be saved somewhere on your laptop, computer. Yes, so it's it have to be in local environment. You can add in link from the website to get your data. That is also okay, but at the moment we're just using everything in your local computer. So here I set echo equal to false because I don't want to print out my code alongside with my output. Because when you're presenting, submitting a document, you just want to have the output and you don't need, people don't need to know what your code is. But sometimes if you want to save a copy of your code, I would set echo equals true because that is very handy because the code in the R chunk. I have this question from our audience. The COVID library is custom made and how to make user-defined libraries. I'm not too sure with this. Anyone have more idea about it? Please feel free to answer it in the chat or just unmute yourself. I didn't encounter with this problem. So what I did is just went to package and install it straight away from CRAN. So I think, not quite, so I think you could choose your library here, which I only have one. So, please.
Yeah, so I think probably what Simmer means is that maybe you want to create your own package. So this means that you want to create your own R package, which is a whole different talk. So I'm happy to link there, maybe a link that will help you to understand how to create that, but that will mean set up your own library, which takes a little bit of effort. And I mean, it's not hard, but of course it's a different topic from what we have today. Yeah. So I'm happy to link something there in the chat.
That's great. Thanks, Anna.
So
if you're successfully installed the package, let's just move on with today's R Markdown. So, so if you wanted to have a copy of your R code, I set echo equals true, because one handy thing with R Markdown output is that if, if you later on needed your output into a PDF or HTML file, you could simply copy and paste the code from the code chunk. So that is very handy because I don't think you could do that in other PDF. It's pretty hard to copy and paste code. So here is pretty easy to do that. So today we already preset the data up. So when you download it, it should be sorted already. So after you successfully run all the libraries, you can run the second R chunk here. So you just click here. And here I set include equals false. That means it wouldn't include any output or any message and any warning message as that. So here we use COVID-19 from the COVID-19 package. And thanks for the people who created it. It's very handy. So country equals 36 is saying that we're extracting the Australia data. Level equals 2. That means we're only getting the administration area level 2, so which are state in Australia. So if you wanted to know more about other countries, feel free to look up the COVID-19 documentation. It shows you more than lots of different other countries and how many level you could have in one data set. So for example, I just run this bit of code. Oh, sorry. For example, if we just run this, let's have a look what it is. So here, you could see that the one thing is different from R script is that I'm looking at my output from my R Markdown. So it is just right below the R chunk. And you could have a quick idea about what does this data looks like and what is involved. So we have ID, days, test, lot of information here. So you can see we have 37 columns and a lot of rows. So this is quite different than running this kind of line in the console, which we normally do. So I just do a comparison here. I copy this, so I copy this line here to my console and have a look, see what it looks like here. So yeah, so here is the result from your console. So we can see that this is, R Markdown is quite handy that you have a general idea about your data. However, when you run the R script in the console, it have more details such as app groups and a little bit more about this data set. So since this data is grouped, we want to ungroup it, and today we're only interested in the date, state, number of tests, confirmed, recover, and deaths. So if we run this R chunk, we will have 3 separate data set called AUS19 and today and VEC. So as the HTML we have showed before, there are a few things we wanted to be automatically updated. The first thing is date. So here, as we shown before, we replaced, because this is a header, and we wanted to replace it with an inline R code. So what we wanted to do here, we just do a backtick R and tell it's the R language. and then we write the code for it. So here, regardless how you wanted to write your R code is all up to you. So here, what I do is I call it max today date. So this inline R code would include the most recent date. Because this data set is great because they update every day, so the max date would just be the most current date in the data set. And we wanted to report the most current Victoria confirmed cases. So I just replaced this one with inline R code as well. So also use max Victoria's data set and confirm. And the last one we want to replace and make it automatically updated every day is the total number of tests. So here, still use inline R code, max Victoria's data set and tests.
I think, Daidai, you misspelled confirmed instead of.
That's okay. Okay. So let's just knead it and see what it looks like. So I'm not quite sure about my. Sorry?
So you missed your backtick there as well.
Oh, right, yes. So when I knead it, all my bugs would show up. So thanks for the correcting. So it might take a while to run. So yeah. So we can see that our date has been changed to the most current date, and also the numbers have been updated as well. So we can compare this one with the table below. So this one is what I generated from yesterday. And then we can see that the total number of tests total number of confirmed being updated, and also the total number of tests also being updated to today's number. So let's move on from the inline R code. So here is the table that is not going to be updated at all because it's just numbers here. It doesn't have any code here. So what we want to do is to replace this table with the R chunk. So I'm using Mac. For Mac to quickly add an R chunk is just Control Option I, and I have an R chunk set up. So I think for Windows system is Control Alternative and I. So try that and see if it works. So for a table in our Markdown, that's where we use a function called cable from Nita. So I'll quickly write down the code. So we'll be reporting today's case. So we use today data set. And you can, if you're familiar with our environment and you're familiar with our Markdown, you can write this bit code in any other different ways. So I'm just showing one way of writing this. So today's we're using Nate. And then the function will be used is called cable. And then let's see what it looks like. So before you need it, you could preview what it looks like from running. And also I misspelled again, I think.
That's okay.
Yeah, so that's also part of debugging. So checking spelling is also the first part of my debugging process. Don't know about others. So yeah, okay. Okay, great. So I have my table here. It looks all right. So comparing with the previous one, so our table's number being updated to the most recent one already. And then we probably wanted to add a caption here. So we call it today's cases. So, and now we knead it and see what it looks like. So it's okay if it's taking a while. It's just giving it a little bit more time to run the code. So you can see that that's what it looks like. So it looks identical besides the figure being updated, it looks identical with the one I had before. However, the information is updated to the most current one. So let's go back to, so the last bit I wanted to show you guys is we also wanted to include a plot. So here I just use this function to insert a picture, which is also works in any kind of Markdown environment. So just use exclamation mark in a square bracket and a round bracket. So in square bracket, you can name this picture, and here is a path to your local picture you wanted to insert. So here I'm just going to replace this with our trunk as well. So here, so the plotting function will be using ggplot. I'll copy this bit that includes inline R code to the chat, and feel free to test it out, see if it works on your computer. And also this bit of R trunk. And later on, I will also send this finalized document, our Markdown document to the chat, so you can try it out later on as well. So please feel free to stop me anytime if your code is not running. I can wait a bit and try to figure out what is wrong. So let's move on to the plot. So we wanted to plot accumulated cases around all Australia. So we use the AUS19 dataset. And then we have to date. And then we wanted a line chart, for example. And then over y equals to, for example, we wanted to plot the confirmed cases. So here you can plot other things, for example, number of total tested, number of deaths, number of hospitalized, regardless what you have in your data set. You can try to plot it here, like plot it the one you're interested in, I guess. Confirmed. And because it's grouped, we wanted to color, we wanted to be color sorted by state. So let's preview it in our Markdown environment. And ta-da, that's the most recent one. Yeah. So I think we've done most of the work now, so we need it and see what it looks like in a HTML file. So I think that's the final report. So for more advanced users, you could make the table interactive as well. You could also, if there's table interactive, you can make the plot interactive. You could customize the way you like it. You can make it as similar as the one that's being published to the health department every day. So, and you could just report the things you're interested in because it's a very comprehensive data set. So take the advantage of it and customize the way you like it. So that's all the end of the demonstration. Any questions related to our Markdown and related to this document? So thanks for Alison Hill for creating this Shining Gun R-Ladies thing. So we have the nice purple color. And thanks for my professors for allowing me using the data for today's demonstration. And also thanks to people who made this COVID-19 package. And it was very easy for us to access all the updated data. And for some resource for future reference, so I would highly recommend download the R Markdown cheat sheet. I use it all the time. It's very handy. You don't need to remember anything. Just go check it out. And also, if you wanted to learn more about R Markdown, go to the book that Yihui wrote about the definitive guide. It has the bottom to top. So it starts from installing R Markdown up to extensions such as Shining Gun and stuff like that. And if you encounter any coding debugging problems, go to Stack Overflow or Ask to Do community. It's pretty open source. Everybody is very friendly and opening to answer all the questions you might have. And if you wanted to learn more about R Markdown, I recommend go to this, check out this workshop by Amy. And a few recent talk about R Markdown. One is done by Yihui Xie, who is the author of R Markdown. He did a live demonstration as well about some advanced tips in our Markdown and some hidden tips that I never know about. And also if you want to hear other people sharing their experience, you can go check out this talk by Professor Heidman about how our Markdown changed my life. And also you can also go back to the slides. And any questions? If not,
Dai, I have one question. Like the tables look really beautiful and organized. So I have a little question about that. Can you move back to the code, please?
yeah, of course. Yes.
It was just like without formatting, they look like all cluttered and everything. Can you talk about more about like yeah, they look more organized. So what we need to keep things in mind, or what codes we need to do to make them look more organized?
I think
with solid lines and everything. Yeah.
I think that's a great, I don't think you need to learn anything about that. So it's just a built-in function in our Markdown. So there's a, so there's a cable extra package that have more styling options. For here, it's just quite plain. So you could play around with the styling options with cable extra. And then if you're familiar with CSS, you could use CSS themes. So what I did at the top, you can see I have this theme line from my HTML. You can, there are different themes you can check out to apply to your HTML output. And thanks, Shadia, for sharing the formatting web link in the chat. And another thing, I think if you have the dataset sorted, you just need to plot it accordingly, that's all.
Okay. Can we have an updated copy of this? Updated copy?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, thank you.
I will send it to I'll upload this to the GitHub as well, if you like. Yeah, so.
Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry. I've just noticed, so when you've got something in a chunk, you can do that, but then you've got the Rmax today date with the backticks. So when do you need to use a chunk and when can you just use the backticks? Is there a fundamental difference?
There are two R code. So one is called inline R code. So you just have one tick, back and front and back. And then there's also the 3 dot with a curly bracket. It's called R chunk. So yeah. I think for me personally, I use inline R code if I wanted to output to be a paragraph or a sentence.
Yeah.
So if or like the inline output have a figure or it's just a text message. But if I wanted to output to be a table or a plot, that's when normally I would use an R chunk.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
If I want to hit the result, if I'm just running some R code, I would just use R chunk as well.
Okay, yeah, great. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
Dai, I have another question. So this is Irish. Yeah. Thanks for the amazing talk. The live demos are stressful, but you did it amazingly. So that was great.
Thanks.
So if you talk about your personal journey and the way you have started learning R, what would you recommend to the audience if they would like to learn? Do you jump onto a problem, I mean? Or would you recommend first going through a formal, for example, an introductory course or a book or something to learn R? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so honestly, I think I'm a quite beginner. I just formally start using it from last year when I start my Master of Applied Econometrics. So personally, because for my econometric degree, we don't need much coding skills. So I wasn't very formally being taught, but I had this workshop run by my professor, Thomas, which is here, which was very helpful. So I think that's pretty much all I have. And I learned along with, I don't think that is a course, but it's more like a few training section to get you started with. But I think most importantly is that you have something you wanted to do using R. So for myself, I built my personal website with it. I tried Shiny app to make an interactive app, and I also use Shining Gun from all my presentation slides, which is here, so I can add all the cute GIFs that I like. So I think it's really that's something you wanted to do with using R, not necessarily that you have to learn a course with it or something. But I think it's a very easy language to start with, to find something you're interested in with using R and start from there. For example, I think Markdown is quite a good place to start. And if you wanted some resource, just the one I provided before are all pretty good starting point. And also I recommend, so when I first start, I use this one called Daidai as an online learning tool. But I think that's pretty much it is. Yeah, if you're interested in it, yeah, get your hand dirty.
That's a great advice. Thank you so much.
I have another question in regards to our Markdown. So like I do quite lengthy analysis with like big data sets. And obviously I don't want to show everything like, you know, that is going in between. I just want the summaries at the end, but I still need to run the code with the analysis to get to the end product. So how would you use, you know, our Markdown without getting, you know, like the mid part of the analysis and things like that?
That's a great question. So, last semester I was running like some very expensive functions in my R Markdown file. So when I was doing simulations for lots of times, it just need to run for 10 minutes or sometimes. And for R Markdown, it actually runs every R chunk every time if you don't put any options there. So that could be quite expensive. So there's another function called cache. You could set cache equals to, let me get the, so I think it's cache equals to, so there's a cache option you could set in your, so cache equals to true, it store the result if the R code doesn't change. So for example, if your data set doesn't change and you don't want to run it all the time, you would set cache in the chunk option, set cache equals to true and store that somewhere else. So that would be just in your global environment. So it doesn't need to run for that data set all the time.
Can I give just a comment?
Yeah.
Hi. Another thing that you could do, if it's something that you are doing often, you can also you can either have separate R scripts to run certain analyses and then source them in your R Markdown. Or alternatively, you can also save your output. Like it's kind of similar to the cache option that Dai is suggesting. You can save as R data and then you can read that in for your report, kind of your report in R Markdown. So then you're not rerunning everything, but you're just reading in results from your previous analysis for visualization and reporting. So there's several options. It just depends what works the best for you.
And when you mean sourcing, like how would you do that? Like, sorry, I'm just very beginning at this. So
no, it's okay. It's literally source parentheses quotes R script name, like file path. And then but again, that's also still running it, right? So you may want to consider saving as an R data that then you can read into R and plot or whatever you need to do with the results of your analyses. It just depends on what works the best for you.
So like, would you run it, like you would run the analysis first with your R like script, and then once you have all the tables and everything that you want, you kind of just source them to put into our Markdown to kind of create that clean version.
Yeah, or you can also say you can save out all the objects and files created from whatever analysis R Markdown or script, whatever you prefer to use. And then if you read it, basically the nice thing about our data is you can save multiple file types. So you can save, for example, you know, like an analysis model results and then a data frame, and you can save an object, you can save a bunch of different things and then read them all in and then use that to then create your report. Depends on your workflow, but yeah, those are all options.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So if I don't have any question from the audience, I have a question for you guys. So what if I want to use R Markdown for other language? So it turns out to be that you could run different kind of language chunk in your R Markdown. So I wouldn't do a demonstration because it was breaking my R, but what you could do is still add in a R chunk, but in the curly bracket, change R into Python. And that would change that entire R chunk into Python environment. So that is also great for R Markdown. And also, you could also put other language in, such as data. I'm not quite sure if it's others, but if there is no if there's no environment like that, you could write a package to embed it with R Markdown. So it will still be updating and quite neatly as well. So if that's all the questions, please stay in touch. So I'm graduating end of the year, looking for a job in data related area in Melbourne. So please feel free to email me or email me on LinkedIn. And thank you everybody for coming today. Thanks.